Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the official International Brotherhood of Magicians podcast. My name's Jason Michaels. I am joined by Ben Young, Scott Cantrell. Hello, gentlemen. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, buddy. Nice to see you, Ben.
Hello.
Because I
We
think
always
we
have the
have the
most
most,
awkward, most awkward.
every single time we open the show, it couldn't be more awkward.
That's part of the fun. It's our shtick. It's part of our shtick.
Every time somebody's like,
Listeners,
they listen to a couple in a row and they're like, oh, these guys don't know what they're doing.
no, they've said that they look forward to this. They're
Yeah.
mailing us in. They're saying, "Man, we love your quirky opening."
I've got a stack of letters here that are nothing but people talking about how awkward and awesome our introduction is.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll let you read that stack of letters at a later time.
Have we been doing this long enough that we can have a spin-off pod? It seems like we should have a spin-off
A
pod.
spin-off pod. I'll let you. You know what, dude? You're in charge. You get to put together
Yeah.
the spin-off pod.
It'll be just Scott and I, and we just talk about you mostly.
Yeah,
Oh
that could be
gosh.
fun. Yeah, so where on this podcast we talk about and rant about other random things. On our podcast, Ben, it'll just be talking about Jason.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of ammunition right there.
Oh, we
It's
could go for years on this.
So hey, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking well, there's a couple of different, I feel like, related topics, but I was wondering why. So I know we've all talked about like our origin stories, like what got us into magic. But we meet a lot of magicians, especially when we go to things like magic conventions or all sorts of different events where magic club meetings. Obviously there are like so many like rings in 88 countries around the world. The IBM has all these different clubs, which if you're unfamiliar, they're called rings. And so, there's, we talk to, we just, our friends become other magicians. And so you hear these origin stories, you hear how people got into magic. And, oftentimes the stories are similar, and many times it has to do with somebody at we'll just say impressionable age. And they see a magician and they just kind of get a little bit hooked on magic, and that's kind of what gets them started performing magic. But I was just kind of thinking about it, like, because I've asked people, I've heard people say things like, I was at an event, I was at playing golf with a couple of guys, and one of the guys, they were all magicians, and one of the guys said something along the lines of, he said, "Oh, we do it for the audience," which made me think to myself, "Oh, that's interesting. Do we do it for the audience? Because I'd like to think that we perform magic for the audience, but it makes me wonder, why do we actually do magic? Like, what is the reason? Because I think to a certain extent, if we're really honest, part of the reason for doing magic is very much for ourselves. Like, we see magic, we have this incredible experience, and we want to recreate it. Now, sometimes it's because we want to share that experience with others, but sometimes it's just because we think it's like the coolest thing in the world. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, and I think it's perfectly okay to like be like, we can say the things that like are like the politically correct thing to say, but at the same time I think it's okay to be like just real, like, straightforward about it. Like, no, I do magic for myself. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, if we're because why do people do anything? Why do people choose different hobbies? Why do they choose different professions? Let's get into it. Like, Ben, when you think about why you do magic, do you is your sole purpose for doing magic because
The ladies.
you know what? Fair.
That's an answer. It's a good answer.
No, you can finish your sentence. Or
No, you know where I'm going with this. I've already
know where you're
prefaced
going.
it.
I haven't thought about it a whole lot. I mean, when I got into magic, when the bug bit me properly, I saw David Blaine on TV. I saw his street magic special, and I was kind of simultaneously enamored by the holy cow, how is he doing that? but also the reactions that he was getting.
Yeah.
And I think
Those
that there was just,
reactions, oh man. Oh
I mean,
wow.
how can you not? How can you not look at that and go, I want to do that. I want people to feel like that when I do something.
Yeah.
Now, so there's certainly a part of it that is for the audience, giving them a reaction, but there's no way that it's a completely altruistic endeavor. Like, and as time goes on, when I am working on new material, a lot of the times it's things that tickle me.
Well, that's where I was hoping to go with this conversation. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
glad you said that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, some of the, we were just talking about this on our tour recently. Some of the bits that I've done over the years, like that have fallen out of the show, probably for good reason. But I did them because I thought they were funny.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's that play of like, well, the audience has to enjoy it too, or else it's not going to stay. But the impetus wasn't really, oh, I think that this is going to be really fun for the people. It was like, this is fun for me. Hopefully,
Hmm.
other people agree.
Hmm. Yeah. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I think Ben said it really well. I mean, when I first started, this part of that origin story, but it's totally relevant to your question, and that is, I was 11 years old. I'm still largely an introvert when I'm not in a public setting. Like I'm just hanging out with people or it's casual. I'm going to be more in the introverted side, and that's probably true for a lot of. It is true for a lot of magicians that I know and that I've met, right? And for me at 11, magic was my outlet. It was the thing that allowed me to interact with strangers or people I didn't know so well. It gave me a language, right, that I could share and present. Something that I was comfortable with. And it wasn't so much about look what I can do and you can't. Um, no question, at 11 years old, that gave some level of confidence and, there was something to that, but that wasn't the reason I was doing it. It really was what you said, Jason, which is I think this is really, really cool. And I want you to think this is really, really cool. Do you think this is really, really cool? And, as long as they didn't see the thumb tip or, me hiding something in finger palm, most of the time they thought it was really, really cool. And then that became that feedback loop, right? And I got addicted to it. Got addicted to that feeling, not of fooling people, but of generating that reaction that I had when I was younger. And through the empathy with my audience, I was able to continuously have that feeling every time I did a show and they experienced what I fell in love with. I got a taste of that too. And that became my enthusiasm. That became the foundation of my enthusiasm with magic. Over time, it's evolved, right? And it doesn't mean I don't still experience that because I certainly do. And I think that's still the primary reason I do magic now. Um, but it's not magic in my world is not as novel as it once was. And so to Ben's point about putting new stuff in the show, that's for me, that's how I stoke that experience from when I was younger, is with something new. It's so easy in my space, and I've had similar conversations, to fall into a rut of performing the same material over and over again. It doesn't mean that I still don't do the same material I did even 20 years ago, but I've got to be working on something new for it to be as fun as it needs to be for me.
Yeah.
And hopefully the audience always has a good experience. They don't perceive that that guy's just, going through the motions. Obviously, he's been doing this forever. He doesn't even care. Hopefully, they don't have that experience, and I can still treat it like it's the illusion of the first time for the audience. But for me to be enthusiastic or excited, I've got to be learning something. I've got to be walking a tightrope a little bit in terms of my material, not knowing exactly how the audience is supposed to act or should act, but testing the waters. And if it's something I enjoy, I don't mind walking that tightrope.
It
Yeah, go
it
ahead, Ben.
seems like it's sort of symbiotic. So you have, let's say a trick that you like, that you hope that other people will like too. So you're doing it because you like it, so that's for you. But then you're doing it for them, so that's for them. And then if they like it, then they're going to clap or react in some way, which is then back to you. And so it's sort of this circle where even if you're doing it for them, if they react, then you're getting something back for it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do know what you mean, and I think all of that from both of you is very well said. Which begs the question: who do you create for, or who do you perform for? And let me explain why I'm asking this, because it sounds like I'm asking the same question I already asked. But um, what is more important? Is it more important
Mhm.
to fulfill the things that you make that charge you up, or is it more important to kind of like always focus on the audience? I guess what my point is that if you are always focused solely on the audience and giving the audience what you believe the audience is going to like, then are you ever really putting anything of yourself into it? Because that sort of comment of "we do it for the audience," as much as I agreed at the time, it really made me think, and it made me say to myself, "But what about me?" Because I am the one who is choosing to stand up on this stage. I am the one who is choosing to put myself, in this, it's not a precarious position, but I'm putting myself at risk. Nobody in the audience is putting themselves at risk. This is very much about me. It's 100% about me. And if I have something that I legitimately want to say, then it is all about me. It's, if, I guess if there's some message that I want to share in my performance, then that's that we're talking about we're back to this conversation of artist versus entertainer.
Mhm.
Whereas an entertainer's goal is to focus on the audience, and I think you can almost be a little too focused. There are times when you can focus too much on the audience, where it's all about the audience's experience, and you are completely interchangeable with anybody else. Just insert anybody else here, and they can do the same thing you're doing as long as they have the same skill set. But the moment you make it about you and your point of view and the things that really genuinely matter to you, then it is about you. And there is some sort of artistic integrity that is being infused in your performance. And that is probably the only time you can actually call it art. We can get into a conversation about whether or not magic is art, but if you're not infusing some element of yourself into it, it's probably not in any way, shape, or form art, unless you consider the experience of mystery and the experience of suspense art. And we can get into that too. But what about that? What about who is more, do you think it's important to have style and point of view? Because I've seen plenty of magicians that do a very good magic show and the audience is very pleased with what they got. And then I've seen magicians who have, let's talk about Zabrecki. I mean, Zabrecki, he has a real specific point of view. And I know that because he has a point of view, he puts himself out there every time he walks on stage. There are going to be audiences who absolutely love what he does, and there are going to be audiences who do not like what he does, period. It's just the way that it is because he's taking a risk.
Yep. Just a quick side note specifically about Zabrecki. Um, Everyone who's coming to the IBM convention, we're putting together kind of a giveaway with downloads and stuff. And I had the privilege of recording a quite detailed, lengthy interview with Rob Zabrecki, and we talked about the development of his character and Zabrecki, who was on stage. And I don't remember exact question I asked, but basically to your point, Jason, one of the things he talked about was how many times he had to fail in front of an audience in order to find that balance between something that was true to what he was trying to create and authentic to that and fun for him and that played for the audience. And I mean, the amount of material and variations that he had to go through and scripting changes and so forth to land on something that works was monumentous. And I think one of the reasons Zabrecki is Zabrecki is because he was willing to go through that. He was willing to go on that journey and go through that. I'll call it pain. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He might not call it pain, but to go through that experience, that journey of evolution to figure out what works and what doesn't. And he was willing, Jason, to your point, he was willing to take that risk to get to that place. And not every performer is willing to do that. Um, and thus the result is what it is. And that's not a judgment either way, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I'm not gonna judge someone because they're not willing to put in the time or effort in terms of developing something unique because of Brecky did it. But clearly, clearly, he's also very talented. But he was willing to go through that process to end up at that destination, at that place. And that is a very, very challenging, difficult process. But goodness, um, do the fruits of that labor, are they not worth it? I mean, they're incredibly valuable result if you're willing to go through that pain. And I've gone through that at a level, not to the extent or level that Zabrecki has. And I mean, just transparently, I don't know that I would be in where I am in my life right now. I don't know if I would be willing or able to go through that to the extent that he did.
You know what? That's fair. That's
Yeah.
100% fair. Yeah. It's not for
But
everybody.
I understand it and I appreciate it and respect the heck out of it.
Yeah. Ben, I've watched you over the years because I've known you now for was it 2017 when we really started?
16.
16? So I've
16.
known you for
Yeah.
9 years and I've watched you develop over time. And one of the things that has been interesting to watch you develop as a magician is you really will not do something. You simply like won't do something out of the box. Like I have watched you take material that is it's in the marketplace and that you can be purchased and whatnot. If you like, you won't even touch it unless you feel like there's something that you can really somehow impart some element of you in it. So what do you, for you personally, what are the ratios between
Hmm.
what's more important, you or the audience?
Well, tell us how much you hate your audiences. That's what he was trying to ask.
Well, yeah, I mean it is a slightly selfish thing because I want the material to feel like me. I want to relate to it. And so I am thinking about myself. But I will say, I'm slightly dodging the question, but I will say that because
I like how
of
you're like, I am slightly dodging the question.
yeah, I'm answering the question I wanted you to ask.
Okay.
So uh
Ben for president. Okay.
by of the I.B.M.
Whatever you want.
By spinning things or adding something in that makes it a little more me, I feel like audiences feel like they know me more than if I had done something out of the box.
Hmm.
And and that doesn't mean that you are telling a story about your childhood and not seeing snow when you were a kid or whatever it is. But the fact that I've taken the time to say, here's something that I am interested in or that I want to say, and I'm inserting it into this piece, people get a sense of what I'm interested in and who I am. And so I forget the point, but I recommend doing that. But I do want to say that I don't labor it over so much to where I consider all my material original. I am taking things that already exist or that have been written or that are on the market, but I have to have some nugget of something that is interesting to me or a presentational spin or something that I can kind of latch onto so that I feel like it's a little bit more for me. And I feel like it resonates with the audience. I've been told that it does.
Yeah. I mean, I really do think that if you're an entertainer who really cares about the experience, then I think that you absolutely have to care about the audience. And that's why, like, when this guy said, oh, we do it for the audience, like, my snap response was, oh, of course we do. And it was after the fact that I started thinking about it, and I was like, but do we do it for the audience? Certainly. If you've ever written material and you've said, well, I think they're going to laugh at this, if you've ever selected material going, oh, this is going to kill, then you're considering your audience. I mean, there's no question. Obviously, you were creating ideas, you were coming up with things because you think the audience is going to somehow be impacted. With that
Right.
said, with that said, I do think that you are absolutely pivotal. And I think you, as the performer, I think simply put, you're the most important thing. Period.
Are you
You as the
talking to Ben, or
performer.
are you talking to Ben or me,
I'm
Jason?
talking
Which
to
which one do you
everybody
like
who's
more?
listening.
Oh,
I'm talking to everybody because here at the end of the day, here's what happens when you are a performer and you are entertaining someone with magic, whether it's close-up magic, whether it's on stage, whatever. When you start the process of performing magic, you take on the role of leader of a group. You are now the leader, and
yep.
everybody else is following you. They're wanting to see where you're going to take them. If you are not important, then you can't do that. If you can't take the role of leader, and now, so not everybody does it well, but the people who, like, genuinely have a great deal of confidence in themselves, usually that's born through just experience performing, and you learn confidence and you learn how to do that. But if you have enough confidence in yourself to stand firmly rooted in the ground and lead the audience, then you are the most important person, because without that because we've seen poor leaders and they create poor experiences. If you're not a strong leader of the group, then people go, well, that wasn't very good. And we've seen people do shows like that. But if you're a strong leader and you make courageous decisions, and sometimes courageous decisions are saying things that are in your own mind a little bit out of your comfort level. Sometimes doing things, you have to be willing to try things. Like, for instance, like, here's an example. Like, I do a trick called Hotel 52. It's based on the script Hotel 52. I think it's a David Regal script. It was in the
Yep.
book Scripting Magic. And when I do Hotel 52, I tell people at the very beginning, I say, you're going to have an interesting experience. Some of you are going to be able to have the experience of surprise, while others have the experience of suspense. And the idea is that if you want to be surprised, if you want something to happen where you feel surprised, the traditional experience of amazement, in a moment, I'm going to show everybody something, and I just want you to close your eyes. But if you want to have the experience of suspense and you want to know exactly what's going to happen and be wondering how we're going to get there, I'm going to ask you to leave your eyes open. And I show everybody the end result of what is going to happen at the end of that trick before the trick ever starts. Well, that was risky. That was risky for me. I didn't know if it would work, but I took that idea where I said, I'm going to show them the end of this trick. There are going to be people who experience this that are not surprised, and they may not even experience the traditional experience of magic. But I think this idea is important enough, and I want to try this idea out and see if it works, that I was willing to stand firmly on my 2 feet in front of that audience, pretend like I had massive confidence, and just do it as though this is exactly the experience that I want you to have. And it was by doing that, and then by doing it over and over and over again, that I learned whether or not that idea had any merit.
Yep. Yep.
However,
However,
you can't be the leader of a group if you don't have the group to lead.
fair. Valid.
Boom.
So
Wow.
so
Very
the
philosophical.
audience is important, or else all of this is for naught. And that's something I've been thinking about during this talk, is that we are talking about a performance art,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of need someone
To
to
walk.
absorb it for it to be a thing. Like if you took writing or even music, that's something that you can do solo. You could write music for yourself because you're expressing feelings. You could write poetry, you could write stories, whatever, that kind of thing. Doesn't necessarily need an audience. It could be just for you. Magic, I feel like, is a lot harder. And you need that audience. And so they are important. How do you lead them without them?
Absolutely. Well put.
Magic is
Thank you so
interesting in
much.
that way, right? That's a great observation, Ben. I don't know if it's unique as an art form in that way, but I'm struggling to.
No, but I mean, if you
No, but
have uh, movies and plays,
yeah,
I mean, anything it
requires
needs
an
to be
audience.
viewed by someone. It needs to be
Right.
absorbed by somebody.
Yep.
Um,
And magic even requires a different. There are a lot of similarities between video games, right? We talked to Randy Pitchford
mhm.
Jason the other
Mhm.
day about this, but between video games and movies and plays and those types of performance arts that require an audience. But there are very explicit differences between those and magic. Magic in the sense that it requires a different kind of suspension of your belief system, right? You have to basically suspend disbelief to really enjoy it. And you, as magicians, we want our audience to suspend that disbelief, knowing intellectually that yeah, okay, they get it, it's a trick. But if if everybody in the audience was always sitting like this is to both your points really, everybody in the audience is always sitting with their arms crossed, and every time you do something, they don't know how it's done, but they look at their neighbor and say, it's just a trick. It's just a trick. It's just a trick, right? And we've all had audience members like that at some
Yeah, sure,
level.
sure.
Um, but if that's what everybody did, then the whole thing doesn't work, right? And so, to the point you're making, Ben, you're going to have these kinds of cross-armed people in audiences from time to time. This actually, I had pulled out this quote while we were talking, and I didn't think it would play. I didn't think it would go into this conversation, but now hearing me talk, it's perfect. Uh, I've mentioned him before, but he posts great quotes on Facebook. Nick Lewin, he has this quote. I don't know if it's his, but I assume it's his. Um, Magic isn't about tricking people; it's about making them love being tricked.
Hmm.
And this kind of
That's
goes
good.
straight to this idea of who is more important. Is it the performer? Is it the audience? I don't know what Nick's opinion would be, but I think that quote is very insightful in the sense that our job as a performer, right? We have to bring entertainment to the audience in some way. We're choosing magic and astonishment and amazement as our media, as our form to do that. Of course, intellectually, everybody knows it's a trick. The entertainment comes from this moment of them being willing to suspend their disbelief. And I think magic is unique in that sense, is that even with a movie, there is that agreement in a way, but a movie is flat and not in real life. A play is maybe a little bit closer, but it's a different kind of experience because it usually doesn't break the fourth wall. Magic is all about breaking the fourth wall and in having that level of engagement interaction. For me, and so now going back to I know I've a little tangent here, but going back to the original question, for me, the thing that I enjoy most for me, right? What I get most excited about is the engagement and the interaction with the audience. It's not just about seeing their reaction or about performing this amazing trick and them being amazed by it. It really, for me, it's about creating a very unique experience in that moment, in that place with that particular group of people that can never be repeated, right? For whatever reason, right? An ad lib, a quip, just the energy in the room is different because the people are different. Could be that simple. But that's the thing. That's so in that experience, the reason I do magic is not necessarily um I guess what I'm trying to say is the reason I do magic is yes and it is
Uh-oh, we've got into improv all of a
yeah,
sudden.
Here
it
we
is to make
go.
me feel good about it does make me feel good, but what makes me feel good is the engagement interaction with the audience. So I
Mhm.
feel like I know that the shows where I feel like haven't gone well are the in my world are not the ones where the audience has said that was amazing. They're the ones where I'm not getting the reactions from the audience that I want. And in my world, that's laughter or that sometimes is an awkward silence or whatever it may be, right? What I'm going for in my set, in my act. So, I think my net on this is, and this is kind of a cop out answer, but for me, I think it happens to be true. If we think of these things as a seesaw, right? As a balance. And on one side, it's all about the performer makes it all about them, right? And there are performers who do that, and some of them can play that really, really well, and that's okay. On the other side, it's all about the audience. Maybe there are some performers that can play that really, really well. At least the audience has enjoyment of it. I don't know if the performer is fulfilled by it. Maybe some of them are. But in my world, and maybe it's true for every magical entertainer, is where that lever point is under that seesaw changes, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it
Okay.
doesn't have to be exactly in the middle for magician A, but it does for magician B. And for magician C, his or her lever point, the pivot point is further one side to another. And so I think it just depends on the nature of your character, the nature of what you care about, the nature of where you want to be. In my world, I think my pivot point is going to be further over to the performer side so that more of the power in my world comes from the audience. I think I err on the side of caring more about how the audience reacts than I do about my own ability to, amaze them, so to speak.
Yeah. And you know what? I will say that for me, it has changed over time because it
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
be, I remember for a very long time that it was very much about just creating, trying to find the best magic that I could that I knew would create a really great magic experience for the audience. Like it was so focused on the audience. And then, um, just I don't know what the reasons are, but there were certain things that I just started feeling like, well, what about the things that I want to express that maybe aren't that don't naturally fall into just a magic, but I there's something that I want to say. And so little by little, it started to shift because I just started thinking to myself, well, I'm the one who's up there and they're the one they're watching me. And so, what do I want to share? What do I want? I mean, hopefully I'm still very focused on the experience that the audience has because I do want the audience to have a blast, but just my own personal experiences just over time it has made a shift.
Well, and here's a really important point that, and your evolution, what you just talked about, made me think of this. Um, these things, I said yes and earlier, but these things are not mutually exclusive, right? This is not a zero-sum game. If you care more about yourself on stage, you care less about the audience, not necessarily. Or you care more about yourself and you're sacrificing, right, the reaction of the audience. That doesn't have to be true. And vice versa. If you care more about the audience, you don't innately have to sacrifice, yourself on stage. Um, Commerciality and art aren't inherently mutually exclusive. It is very difficult to find both. And either one is, in my opinion, worthy in and of itself for those performers. And Jason, you've done this. You started to find both, I think, commercial viability and success, along with being able to put yourself into your magic in a truly artistic way. I think David Copperfield has been successful with that. David Blaine in his own way. Um, Derek Delgadio,
Oh, for
certainly,
sure.
the very top of that, perhaps in terms of his show in and of itself that he did in New York. You know, it can't be quantified. But all of that, the net of all I'm saying is the two things I don't think have to be mutually exclusive, even though it's incredibly difficult to do both at the same time.
Go
At
ahead,
the end of
Ben.
the day, you could tell I was about to talk because my mouth was wide open. I'm like, I'm waiting. At the end of the day, no one's forcing us to perform.
Yeah.
Generally, as far as I know, I don't know if anyone who's being forced to be at the I.B.M. convention. Little plug, but we're doing it because we want to.
Yeah.
So in that way, we're always going to come first because this is what we decided to do.
That's fair.
And if we want to dive into the artist journey here, we're saying the things we want to say. We're conveying whatever stories and whatever. But the thing is, audiences also like stories and they like connecting with humans. And so if we are doing what we want to do and it's resonating with them, that's going to be better for us. If it doesn't resonate with them, it is going to be negative reinforcement to keep doing the thing we're doing. And that is where it becomes challenging when we talk about like people like Ziprecki who have a very what's the word?
Nuanced.
Unique.
I was going to say, oh, clear, like clear point of view,
Oh,
clear
clear point. Yeah.
character. And it's polarizing. Some people are going to absolutely love it. Some people are going to absolutely hate it. But you have to find the people that love it. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. We're not being forced to do it. We want to.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you'll make excellent points. Well said, both of you. Hmm. Yeah, you make me think, and I
I
appreciate that.
I have a tangent though, a side note.
By all
What
means.
about magic that has methods that were definitely created just for us?
Oh, interesting.
But because when you are thinking about the audience, you're thinking about the end goal, right? What does it look like to them? But there are so many things out there where the method is so convoluted, but we get off on it because we think it's cool, but it doesn't matter. And maybe this is a conversation for another podcast, but that was something that popped in my head early on in this talk of something that it is all about us. It's like, oh, right, we're going to do any card at any number, but we're going to do it with this and then this flap and then this and this and this and this and this. And when there's a simpler way to do it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting the idea that I remember at one point years ago thinking to myself, well, geez, I mean, if we're talking about impactful magic, all you really need are like three techniques.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. You need a control, you need a force, and I mean it's like all you need are a few things, and then you just go from there. But yeah, to your points, if the sum of a performance is 100%, then we're talking about there are going to be occasions, and honestly, it probably in any one show, it probably is a sliding scale. Like one trick is 30% for the audience and 70% for
That's a
you.
great point. Yeah. Is it could be material based, not just performance based, right? Yeah.
Because to your point earlier about performing new material to keep yourself into it, sometimes you need to pick material just to keep yourself excited about what you're doing. If you're not doing a lot of shows, then maybe this doesn't happen a lot. But when you're doing or when you've been in magic for a long time and you have the tricks that are money every single time, you know what's going to happen, you know how the audience is going to respond, you've seen it happen a million times. The only thing that gets you excited is when you have a new trick with a bunch of unknowns, and it's like all of a sudden you feel like you're on edge again. It's like, oh, I'm on edge. Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Let's see how this goes. So yeah. On that same thing, and I know this podcast is going to be a little shorter than some of the ones we've done in the past. We only have about 10 minutes left, but uh, I wanted to ask this question. I feel like it's related, but it's not. It's not on the exact same topic. So here is the question, because as magicians walking this path of magic and having conversations with people, we often hear people say the art of magic. So, my question isn't what makes magic art. My question is, can the experience of magic, specifically mystery, surprise, and amazement, can that rise to the level of art? I'm not talking about your point of view. I'm not talking about some social message. I'm talking about the experience of magic. Can that be art? Tough question, honestly. I probably should have given you guys this one to think about ahead of time, because it's kind of like now that I'm saying it, I'm like, that's a tough question to answer. Um, I will say this, that if you go to see art, let's say traditional art,
Right.
you go see paintings, you go see sculptures, maybe you even see a performance artist. The goal is that the artist has expressed something, and hopefully it connects with you emotionally.
Right.
Usually, if we're talking about art, we're talking about something that is connected to you emotionally so that you're emotionally attached to it. So, with that said, does that spur any ideas from you guys?
So phrasing it like that, expressing something, what it makes me think of is because my general thought is that yes, it is art. Um, but if we look at something like let's say ambitious card, and you're doing
Okay.
it with, you're literally just doing the techniques. You're not adding anything of yourself into it. Can that be art? So I think if you look at it like if a painter is expressing something through the painting, and hopefully it resonates with the audience, maybe what magic is doing is it's the feeling is being expressed by the viewer instead of the artist. So you do the techniques for the ambitious card. You don't say anything. There's no personality. There's nothing. It could be anyone's hands doing it, but the feeling of wonder, astonishment, whatever word you want to use, is being expressed by the audience. Therefore, art. Maybe.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. That's a
Yeah, I'm gonna say what I was going to say, but I think I've been convinced by Ben's argument. I was thinking of the old magic videos, the tutorials where all you saw were hands, right? And they were doing sponge balls or cards or ropes or whatever. And I watched those as a kid and I was amazed. I had an experience of wonder. I guess part of this question is how do you define art? But if we are defining it as the provocation or evocation of emotion from an audience, then then can suspense, amazement, and surprise be art in and of themselves? I think yes. If we define art as the provocation or evocation of emotion based on an experience. Um, so yes, Ben, that's a great way to frame it. What I was thinking though was if art, and maybe there is a delineation, and I'll have to go look up art and philosophy to determine what definition I like the best. But if art, however, requires a personal viewpoint, a perspective, yeah, a personal viewpoint or perspective, then if art requires that, if you think about a Van Gogh painting, or if you think about a piece of music by Mozart, or any, sculpture by Michelangelo, those things have a point of view, have a very defined perspective. Um, if that's required for art, then do the experiences of surprise, amazement, and suspense through the performance of a magic effect by a pair of hands with no, if it's possible, if it's possible to do that without having a personal point of view, even with a pair of hands, then the argument might be no, right? No, it doesn't innately rise to the level of art if a personal point of view is required.
So how does a set of hands performing sleight of hand technique, how does that differ than looking at a painting of a landscape and you have no idea what the dude was thinking or the chick was thinking when they painted it?
Yeah,
All you're looking at is technique.
yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
very good point. And your point is kind of what I was alluding to, Jason, is I said if it's possible. It may not be possible for a pair of hands that's performing a piece of sleight of hand to not offer some kind of point of view, right? And it may not be possible for that not to have a seed. We can argue about the quality of the art, right? But it might not be possible for that to not be at least a seedling of art.
All
Sort of a
right, so
case in
let's
point.
take go ahead. Okay, so let's take it like this. If the art world, and specifically like painting, has all these different schools and the artists learn from teachers, then could you say that a performance, if sleight of hand technique has, I don't know, 100 techniques that you can learn, one performance of sleight of hand technique versus a different performance of sleight of hand technique executing the exact same trick, what does that tell you about the performer?
Yeah.
They chose different tools instead of using impressionistic techniques. This painter used a different set of techniques. Maybe that's because that's the way they were taught. But this magician who maybe has 100 different techniques of sleight of hand has over the years made decisions and changed things based on their own personal preference. And if they choose not to say anything, just the selection of the techniques must tell people in the know something. It must tell them something about the performer. Maybe not the general public, but the people who
Yeah.
understand the techniques.
Yeah. I'm totally sold. I'm totally 100% sold on that. I think it's exactly right. It may be a comparison, frankly, that we don't draw enough. There's conversations all the time about, usually in the layperson world, the public world, is magic really an art, right? And most magicians staunchly say 100% absolutely, because I've seen some of the best magicians on the planet and they are artists. Um, and I've seen some of the worst magicians on the planet and they're artists too, just in a totally different way. Uh, um, so I think you actually make a really important, both of you, I think, make really important points. At that point, though, if we're looking at technique and process, just as we would with a painter, sculptor, musician, etc., it's not about, and then we apply that to magic. We're we are the art is, at least in part, due to the process, due to the technique. Art is created through the technique and through the process. It is not solely based on the result.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not solely based on the fact that I was amazed or surprised or fooled, right? So maybe a different way for me to think about the question is tricking someone or fooling someone, is that in and of itself art? And the answer, it's an open question in my world right now. This is a great conversation. Maybe we do another talk on this. But is the mere act of fooling someone art? I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm going to be compelled to say no. But it could be, right? It depends on what's around that.
But maybe the art form it's the art of learning how to fool people,
The art of deception.
the art of deception. Being fooled isn't art, but the act of fooling is maybe the
Yeah,
art.
this
Could
kind of
be.
goes back to that
And
idea of technique. Yeah. I'll buy it.
also, how many times have we seen art, like fine art, let's say paintings, sculpture, that kind of thing, where we don't know anything about the technique, we don't know anything about the meaning behind it, but all we know is that we like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So one definition of what could be art is when it affects some sort of a response from your audience.
right.
Mhm.
All right, this, like I said, this is going to be a slightly shorter one. It seems like we're going to have to come back and revisit this topic. Of course, that's not hard because these are topics that I enjoy visiting. But all right, we're going to wrap this one up on that question. What is art? If you want to weigh in,
Tell
hey,
us what you all think. I'm
you can share
fascinated.
your opinions. You can let us know. All of our information, if you want to message us, all of our contacts are in the show notes on in the description if you're watching this on YouTube or anything like that. But this has been the I.B.M podcast, the International Brotherhood of Magicians podcast. If you want to learn more about being a magician as a hobbyist or an amateur or a professional or a collector or anybody, if you just like the art of magic, you just dig it, check out magician.org. That is magician.org. And you too can find out where your closest ring is. that would be a local club that is hopefully somewhere near you. You can connect with other like-minded people who love the art of magic as well. All right, for Ben Young and Scott Cantrell, my name is Jason Michaels. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you guys next time. Ciao.